Okay, we're live, Mike. So can I ask you first to just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, the name is Mike Caccioppoli, and I'm running for mayor of San Francisco, California. The election is in November of 2019. Getting an early start, as you know, progressives need to get an early start.
Absolutely.
We
And
don't
then,
have we don't have the money. Yeah, we don't have the money the establishment has. We don't have the backing the establishment has. We're not going to get all the endorsements the establishment gives out to people. So it's just important to start very early. I know most people think 2 years is a long time, but look, hey, we're almost at 2018, right?
that's right.
So I'm
And
starting early.
actually, I think that's important, and that's why I do this YouTube page, is to try to, utilize social media to the best of our abilities. Um, so why don't you tell us why you're running for mayor just initially? You know.
Well, a lot of reasons, but I guess the two most important reasons is the housing and homeless issue. I mean, every person that's run for mayor here has talked about housing and homeless and how they're gonna end homelessness and they're gonna get them off the streets and affordable housing and blah blah blah. And it's just talk. And the only thing that's happened over the last 3 decades, really since the late '80s, early '90s here, things have gotten much worse year by year. They're getting worse. We're having more people on the streets now. We have the last estimate is over 3,000 homeless children. Think about that. 3,000 homeless children on the streets here. We have pregnant women living on the streets here. And the reason for this is people can't afford to live here anymore. People are being evicted every day. And so, I think when people think in their minds about evictions, I don't know. They think maybe who don't want to pay their rent, who are living in a place that's over their heads and they really can't afford it. It's not the case at all. We have people here who have been living here for years and years, families, because their rents are being jacked up 25, 30% every year from apartment to apartment to apartment, and finally out on the streets. And that's what's happening here to a lot of people. And I think a big reason why I'm running is also to make people understand, not just in San Francisco, but people in California and in this country, how bad this issue here is. Slogan, because I guess when you're running for office, you got to have a slogan, is fighting for a progressive San Francisco. And I get people who write to me and say, Mike, I don't live in San Francisco. I've visited a couple of times. What are you talking about? Isn't it the most progressive city in the country? And it just shocks me how people just don't get. They think because most people that live here have a quote unquote liberal democratic mindset that it's a progressive city. It is not. It is a very corporate city. It is probably one of the two, along with New York, the most corporate cities in this country. It's run by corporate America, and the mayor of the city over the last 30 years, to Gavin Newsom, to do nothing Ed Lee right now, have been corporate mayors. They've been in the pockets of corporate America, those of the tech industry, of the real estate industry, of real estate speculators, and that has to end.
So I'm assuming that you're going to run a corporate-free campaign. Is that correct?
Of course, absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
And you're not with the Green Party, but I see you interact with the Green Party quite a bit on social media, and it seems like your platform is fairly aligned with the Green Party.
Yeah, I'm kind of at this point in my life, I think, especially after the 2016 campaign, what I went through. I was a registered Democrat. I wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders, so I voted for Bernie Sanders. Then I switched when it was rigged and it was stolen from him by the Democratic Party establishment. Like many other people, I right away I switched to Green. I voted for Jill Stein. I campaigned for Jill Stein. I met Jill Stein. I met Jamu Baraka. I did whatever I could for her. And after that election, I turned to no party preference. We have no party preference here in California,
Right.
especially in San Francisco. It's becoming the majority party. Really, a lot of people are just tired of the party system.
Yes.
And I felt like I really want to do my own thing. I didn't want to be tied to any party. But yes, I mean, if you look at my platform, it's very much in line with the Green Party. Obviously, it's not aligned at all with the Democratic Party. It's aligned with the Green Party.
Right. And then, so you think there's a lot of corruption with the city officials there?
Well, I think in a lot of in most big cities, and especially in this one, there's that status quo pay for play way things have been done, and to me that is corruption. And it's become just a way of life here for politicians. Look at it as illegal corruption, whether people can go to jail for it. It is, in my view, corruption. When you end up taking money from corporate America, when you take money from the tech industry, which is very big here, and the real estate industry and the developers, and then you put into place policies that help them person hurt the 99%, to me, that's pay for play. To me, that's corruption. You are not representing the people who elected you. And that's a huge problem here.
So for me, I think people confuse what's illegal and corruption as they're the same thing. But
Right.
the wealthiest people are able to change the laws, which to make legal what used to be illegal, like bribery
Absolutely.
and things
Right.
like that.
Exactly.
They just change the law, but it's still
Right.
corrupt.
Or as we've seen with a lot of people in politics, they know when they have the money and the power, they know how to just skirt the laws. They have lawyers that tell them just stay on this side of things, not go on the other side of things, and they end up never going to jail, never being responsible for anything. I'm looking at Wall Street, right? No one was jailed, no one had to go to jail, but the little guy does one little thing wrong that they're not aware they're doing wrong, because they don't have a million lawyers telling them what they can and can't do when it comes to dotting the I, crossing the T, and they end up in jail. And so this is a system of, we talked about this, and I know it's a big Green Party thing, and Jill Stein talked about this a lot, which is not just income inequality in this country, which is huge and vast in this city of mine, but just justice inequality. It needs to be talked about much more. I mean, we've had problems with the police department with shooting people. With shooting black men, unarmed black men, or black men with a knife, shooting them from 15, 20 feet away, 20 times when they're. We know the story. We've heard it too many times over and over again. And it's not just this income inequality that's happening in the city, but there's a huge justice inequality. Why I'm running.
Excellent. Hey, so you have something on your website called the Second Bill of Rights. Let's run
Yes.
through that. I saw 8 items on there. The first item is the right to housing. I know that I've been to San Francisco and just seen a huge amount of homeless people. It amazes me. It's happening in our city too. It seems like it's just getting worse and worse. Can you touch on that?
I walk around here almost every day and every night. In fact, last night I was walking with my friend from City Hall to Union Square, which is a nice walk. And we walked through. You had to go through a Tenderloin, which everyone, when they come to San Francisco, they're warned about the Tenderloin, where just a lot of homeless people. I mean, there are people on the streets. Literally, sometimes there are blocks that are just filled with homeless people. You can't even walk up the sidewalk. So someone who lives here or a tourist could never even walk up the sidewalk because there are just homeless people lying all over the place. Every other block. It's getting so bad now. It's almost like, and I don't think this is really overly dramatizing it. It's almost like a third world country in a lot of ways. And when you think about how much wealth this city has, this city arguably is the wealthiest city in this country. That we have this on the streets here, and we have our politicians doing nothing. They just pay lip service to it. What they'll do is every year they'll come out and they'll put up a phony little thing saying, "Oh, in fact, this year they did it. I wanted to laugh. They said homelessness is down 1%. It's not. Way up. But they fudge the numbers. They do what they have to make it look like they're making a dent in things. Anyone who has eyes and a brain and a heart can see what's going on here when they walk the streets of San Francisco. And it's not just the Tenderloin anymore. It's not just 7 or 8 blocks. It's all over the city. In the wealthiest places, Nob Hill, in the financial district, Pacific Heights, there are homeless people literally lying on the streets and in people's doorways at night to try to get warm, to try to survive. I want people to understand how bad it is here. It really is a very bad situation. And it's something we can fix. We have the money here to fix it. We just don't want to.
Right. What would you do to fix it?
There's several things. One, we need actual public housing, like they do in places like Hong Kong, where you have a mixture of incomes, not just low income, middle income, upper income, real beautiful public housing that people can actually live in, not these single room occupancy rows they call them, which the city does utilize to put people in, but these places are rat infested. They have rules such as you can't have visitors after 7 p.m. It's such a strict it's almost like a prison where the people would rather be on the streets and have freedom than be in these miserable SROs where they're adults and they're treated like prisoners or children, and which is a waste of money, by the way. The city wastes money doing that. We can be building affordable housing. We have the money. The tech industry here is so rich. They alone, just a couple of tech companies, could end homelessness here if they help put some funds into building real affordable housing. The real problem is now is that most affordable housing is tied to luxury units. That's the way they have it. So we'll say, okay, I'm going to build another big, 30-story luxury housing, and you can have 10%. And the city council is always trying to, the supervisor is always trying to fix that number, trying to get a little bit higher. Or we can do 12%, 15%. The problem is we can't have this affordable housing tied to luxury units anymore. It's almost like we're being held captive, hostage by the real estate industry, by the builders here. So we need standalone public housing in this city, just the way they do in places like Hong Kong, where it works and people want to live there, and that is a real way we can get people off the streets, and people can start affording to live here again. Plus, we need really stricter tenant rights here. The problem here is we have landlord rights. The landlords have the rights. We have judges here who are always giving the landlords the benefit of the doubt. They're judges that basically are very very nice to the landlords, but don't really do much for the tenants. So we need stricter tenant rights here, which we don't have. We're very close to getting a law here where if someone's evicted, they automatically get a public defendant. They automatically get someone on their side fighting for them, which I think would be the only city in California that has that right now. I believe New York City just did it, but it's very important to have that. So I mean, there are small steps that are being taken, but until we really look at the issue of income inequality here, I think the problem is only going to get worse. I mean, we're talking about no more middle class here. There isn't a middle class. In fact, a friend of mine was showing some people around town, and there was some homeless people, and he said that's the middle class. And sadly, that is the middle class here in San Francisco. They're living on the streets.
Wow. Wow, I never thought of it that way, but that's very interesting. Hey,
Yeah.
so another thing on your Bill of Rights is the $15 minimum wage, and that would all of these issues are tied together. So how about talk about the $15 minimum wage, and is that enough?
No, it's just a start. And I think I remember Jill Stein saying that, and I agree with her. $15 is a start. That's all it is. We have to look at it as a starting platform and work our way up from there. What $15 can buy you in Kansas City is not going to buy you in San Francisco. I don't think I know $15 an hour is not enough to live here. It's not even close to being enough of living in San Francisco. And so, no, I think once again, it's just a starting point. But I think if I had my way, I would have a starting point of more like $20 here in San Francisco. I just think it needs to be higher.
Yes.
It makes no sense. If you look at the numbers fiscally, that $15 works, in Phoenix, Arizona, and also San Francisco. It doesn't. It's much more expensive to live here. And another issue is we have a situation here where we have adult people in their 30s and 40s, my age, who are living in places with 4 or 5 roommates. Now, this is also, I consider this kind of a quality of life situation, and I want to make this kind of clear. The whole quality of life idea is often hijacked by the right wing, right? When they talk about quality of life. We had this when I was living in New York City under Rudy Giuliani, where his whole idea of better quality of life was cracking down on people who try to evade fares and arresting them and throwing them into jail, people who jaywalk, giving them fines. The right wing has always hijacked quality of life, but I believe quality of life is a progressive populist issue. We need true quality of life for people who are poor, for the middle class. We need a quality of life where someone who's 45 years old and working 2 jobs doesn't have to live with 3 roommates like they're 18 years old. There's quality of life across the board of people living in San Francisco, people who have a roof over their head, life, can't afford to go out to eat one night, can never afford to take a vacation. What this does, it makes people sick, it makes them die younger. Issues that the progressives, I believe, need to take control of nationwide and say this is a progressive issue. Quality of life in this country is a progressive issue, not a right-wing issue.
Yes, I agree with you. That's a good point as well. Also, a big issue in California right now is universal health care. I know that a mayor in that position, doesn't have a lot to say about it, or doesn't have a lot of legal right over it. But go ahead and talk about your position on health care.
Things. First of all, like housing, I think healthcare is a human right. Now, even though the mayor may not have control over that policy nationwide, policy statewide, because California is trying to get, we've been trying for a long time now, system. And of course, we're having fights with the Democrats in Sacramento, not just the Republicans, the Democrats. But as mayor of San Francisco, one of the problems I have with this mayor over the last 7 years is that the city has been, and I think in a way he wants the city to have no visibility because there's so many problems here, like I talk about. He doesn't want these problems to become nationwide. He wants CNN and MSNBC and Fox News to start covering how bad the problem is in San Francisco on a daily basis, because then his feet will be held to the fire, and he doesn't want that. So he kind of wants, he's a low-key guy, and he wants to keep things low-key and doesn't really want to. I think San Francisco needs to have the national visibility it used to have. I mean, there was a time not too long ago where every liberal progressive city wanted to be like San Francisco, and that's not the case anymore. And San Francisco has no national visibility. Most people around this country don't even know who the mayor here is anymore. So I think that is a huge problem. The mayor can use City Hall in San Francisco's bully pulpit to get these issues out there and to get things done. So the mayor might not have any direct control, but he or she has indirect control and can get out there and make these issues national and talk about them. One thing I think we might have to look to doing, if we continue to have these problems with healthcare nationally and statewide, is maybe have a citywide national healthcare. We have something called Healthy San Francisco, but the problem is that that's only available to people who really can't get anything else, can't qualify for Medi-Cal, can't qualify for the Obamacare, and they get this. And the doctors I know tell me that most doctors don't take Healthy San Francisco because Healthy San Francisco doesn't pay anything. So because they don't pay the doctors anything, so we need kind of a Medicare for all system here in San Francisco that can be used by the residents here who need it, who don't have anything else. If we put more money into a system like that, we can possibly make it a citywide Medicare for all kind of a system. And if we put more money into it and we run it better, there'll be more money to pay out and more doctors will take it. And I think we might have to start looking at that healthcare system or a statewide healthcare system.
Very good. And then tell me your views on college tuition. Jill Stein said that she believed in forgiving student loan debt. And also with our current administration, they seem to favor charter schools much more than public schools. Can you talk about education and your views on that?
Sure. I agree with most of Jill Stein and actually Bernie Sanders' assessment of this, that all public colleges should be free. Public college universities should be free. We finally got City College here, City College of San Francisco, free, which is great, but that's just one college. And I think we need to do that with all public colleges and universities. And I really think that I'm a big public school person. I never went to a private school, never even thought about going to a private school. My family wouldn't have been able to afford that. And I believe the education you get in public school is the best education. I think they have the best professors. I think you're put into a classroom with people of all different economic, so very important to not be isolated with just the wealthy, which is often what you get in private schools. So I'm a big public school advocate, and I'm a big, like I said, free college and university. We used to have free colleges and universities in this country. We can do it again. It's vitally important. And I think we can use the City College of San Francisco, what San Francisco and the Board of Supervisors was able to do here, to do that on a larger scale.
Excellent. And so do you think we should forgive college student loan debt?
Absolutely, and we can. I mean, the government can simply, as Jill Stein stated very eloquently many times, just forgive it. The government has the right to do that. and the government has the resources to do that, to simply forgive. Remember, a lot of this debt that's being paid is interest now. A lot of this is just interest. The initial debt has been paid by most people, and they're paying interest, which the government can easily forgive and should forgive. This is not the nonsense, pie in the sky thing that they say Jill Stein talks about. This is a real thing, and it can be done, and it should be done. And then people can actually move on with their lives and not have this debt holding them back.
This is something from your platform that I really like, is public transit. You think we should have a very inexpensive and a very good public transit. Can you talk about that and what can be done in San Francisco?
Yeah, San Francisco has very good public transportation, but when you talk about a major city, it does not have very good public transportation. That's one of the main complaints, not only from people who live here, but people who tourists. I have people who come here with tourists, and they say, I can't come to San Francisco anymore because I come from Chicago or New York or Philadelphia, and we have much better. The public transportation, I can't, the ride shares like Uber or Lyft. And the big problem here is we have not invested enough money, like in most places around this country, in the infrastructure of public transportation, of a train system, a light rail system. We need a much more extensive light rail system here. We need the system we have now to run better. The years I've lived here, it seems like on the average, every 6 months, there's another 25 cent to 50 cent increase in public transportation here, which is absolutely ridiculous. And Mike Caccioppoli's perfect world, public transportation is free. I think it can be free. Once again, we're a very rich city. We can afford to supplement public transportation. This is the way people get around the city. It's the way people get to work. It's the way the city keeps moving. So I think we can have much cheaper public transportation and a much better public transportation system here. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, I'm at a station like Castro Street Station waiting for the Muni, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. I'm waiting 10 minutes. I'm waiting 15 minutes. I'm thinking to myself, no, this needs to run every 3 to 5 minutes. It needs to run like clockwork, so we can have a much more efficient system. We can have a system that's more extensive, and I think that I think San Francisco, if we got our act together, could really be the model for the rest of this country in how a truly progressive city can be run.
Yeah, so I use public transit, and one of my complaints about public transit is that it's really dirty. There's parts of the buses that every single time they're just not clean. I mean, like dusty, and I think that we're trying to move to a clean, renewable energy economy. And one of the things we could do is create jobs to keep, maintain our buses and our public transit. I mean, that will employ people. You know what I mean? So that's
absolutely,
that's my view.
And the upkeep of the systems here, and in fact, in most cities I've been to, whether it's New York or here or Los Angeles, obviously the newer systems seem to be cleaner. They're doing things better. We have Seattle's doing newer buses now, which don't have any of the bad emissions that the old ones used to have. So there are some improvements. But if you go to an older city like Philadelphia or New York or Chicago, you're talking about the same situation where you're getting very dirty trains. You're getting a situation where a lot of people don't want to take public transportation because they don't want to be in a situation where they're dirty. Or the problem we're having here now, especially on BART, is crime. Crime has gone up. And if maybe you're going to get to this, maybe you weren't, but crime in general in San Francisco is going up. And this is not a surprise to anybody who understands that income inequality, the greater the gap, the more crime that's created, because people do what they call improvisation. They have no other way to turn but to turn to crime to try to survive. And so we're seeing crime go up in this city. We're seeing crime in areas that we hadn't seen them before, like on Twin Peaks, in very used to be considered very nice areas, very wealthy areas. We're seeing crime go up, and that's because of the income inequality. And the longer that goes on, the bigger the gap in income inequality, the more people who are forced out into the streets, the more crime we're going to see here. And so it goes hand in hand with the housing and the homeless situation.
Yeah, these are crimes of poverty is what you're talking about. Yes.
Crimes of poverty. Well, very well said. Exactly.
Yes, yes. So, okay. Now, you also, in your Bill of Rights, say that we have a right to clean water and clean air. How do you mean that, and what does that mean to your city? Specifically San Francisco.
Well, I think not that we've had that much of an issue here in the city of San Francisco with water, but I can't tell you how many times I'm watching the news and there were problems with water quality in other places, especially once you start getting into the more, the inland part of California and the East Bay. There are always water issues, and we don't want, we have Hetch Hetchy water, which is, very good water here, and we want to keep it that way. But I think the problem in Flint shows us that we really have to have to, and like you've talked about with the emissions, with air quality. We have to make sure we keep an eye on this, because San Francisco population is going up, 150,000 now. It keeps on going up. We have mostly because wealthy people moving, tech industry people moving here, and we really have to be concerned about the quality of the water and the air quality in the future. And I just think it's important to understand things like healthcare, things like clean air, things like clean water are human rights. And that might be a mind-blowing thing to say, but we've already heard people on the right saying things like, oh, the poor don't have the right to perfect water, or the poor don't have. We've heard these things in the last 6 months to a year, and we have to understand that we have to make sure we understand these are all human rights. When you're in a position of power, you have to make sure that's always in the front of your mind, and it will be when I'm mayor.
So when you talk about clean air and clean water, are you tying this to fossil fuels as well? And what's your position on fossil fuels?
Oh, I'm 100% against fracking. And I think, I think I'm not really into progressive litmus tests, to tell you the truth, where I don't believe that, we have to all agree on every single issue. I think I've made this very clear very often, is that I don't think progressives need to, other than a couple of things, which is corporate money. We cannot take corporate money. No one who runs as a progressive can take any corporate money or big money, wealthy money. They can't. That's out, as far as I'm concerned. And with fracking, I believe that's a huge issue. I don't know how you can be progressive and be pro fracking the way someone like Hillary Clinton is, and many Democrats are. And the ties to the fossil fuel industry, they can't get over, because once again, these industries contribute to their campaigns. It's such a direct thing, corporate money. And I know you guys, the Green Party, agree with this 100%. Corporate money is the root of most evils in this country. If we can get corporate money out of politics, period, altogether, things will change so quickly. Because I do believe there are a lot of politicians, people like myself, who really want to do the right thing, but then they get in a position of power, and they see that these corporate industries help fund their campaigns, help them win elections, and then they start making these little concessions, little by little by little by little by little, until some of them become total corporate shills. And if we get corporate money out of politics, you'll see a lot of these things improve. All these things we're talking about will improve once we get corporate money out of politics, which is every progressive in this country needs to not take 1 cent of corporate money, because it will affect the housing. It will affect the homeless situation. It'll affect clean air. It'll affect clean water. And I'm against fracking, and I think all progressives should be 100% against fracking.
Excellent. Okay. So the last thing on your, actually I skipped one, but the last one on your, in order, is the right to a better life. Can you explain that? Does that just tie in all of these issues together?
It does, and it goes back to what I was talking about with quality of life. The right to quality of life for everyone here in San Francisco. And that has to do with getting people off the streets, getting people into housing, making sure people can afford their housing, so they don't have to move every year when their rents go up. As actually I've had to do. I've had to move from place to another, because these corporations just want to jack up the rents astronomically, and they don't care, because they know they got people willing to come in and take it for that price, for that crazy price. So we need to, like I said, people who are adults, who work a job. People shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs. People shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs and live with roommates when they're 45, 50 years old. They shouldn't have to worry about their families being evicted when the husband and the wife both have jobs. When everyone's working, we call them, I think Bernie's uses the working poor. We have so much working poor here in San Francisco as well. And I think in general, people in San Francisco, quality of life. People work very hard here. I know people that work a lot of hours. They have no leisure time. They put all of their energy into working and affording their rent, paying their utilities. People wake up in the morning here. A lot of people wonder, can I pay my rent this month? Do I have to call the electric company and try to get a payment plan so I can put that money aside so I can pay my rent? Can I go grocery shopping this month? Do I have to put that off another week so I can pay my rent? Do I have to ask my landlord if I can get a 15 days? These are the things that people here deal with every single day. Pressure, that kind of stress, that kind of anxiety is not good. And I believe people afford a better quality of life.
Right. Excellent.
They
Excellent.
deserve it.
So this was an issue that I think is specifically, well, they're all important to me, but I wanted to focus on this one. It's the fifth item in your Bill of Rights, and it says equal justice. Now, I was involved in a demonstration in San Francisco for a gentleman called Luis Gongora Pat, and he was a homeless individual. He was working, but he was homeless, and someone called because I think they believed he was intoxicated in the public, and the police showed up and shot him, and he subsequently died within 30 seconds upon their arrival. Um, I think I talked to you briefly about this case, but my point on this case is that he was evicted. So he had a home and he was evicted. He was, again, what you talk about, the working poor. Bernie Sanders talks about the working poor. Then he's on the street. He's an immigrant. I believe he was undocumented. I'm not 100% sure. And then he was just shot with very little time by the first responders to try to de-escalate the system. In fact, I believe they escalated the system. Again, his name was Luis Gongora Pat. I think I talked to him to you about a little bit. Can you talk about your views on equal justice?
Well, there's that case. There are so many cases. There's Mario Woods, who's also shot and killed by police here. Did not have a gun. If you watch the video, which I've watched too many times, you see he was no threat. He was no threat of bodily harm or death or injury to any of the policemen. What we need here, and around this country, but here in San Francisco and in major cities, we need a better trained police department. We need simply better police. We don't train them. We don't. The training is not extensive enough. It doesn't take into effect the human condition. We don't train our police officers to, and it's a shame you have to say this, that they're all human beings. Even police officers are human beings. So you have to train human beings how to relate to other human beings. But I think it's very much, to me, and I brought this up before, we're seeing it right now, a lot of the sexual accusations and the sexual predatory stuff we're seeing now, is it's a power issue over people who do not have power. And the people who gain this power, what it does to them inside, how it makes them feel towards other people that don't have the means or the power they have. And so I always like to look at this as a power versus powerless situation, like an oppression situation, more than a race or a sex or a gender situation. Yes, race plays into it 100%. Power who want to do bad things, let's say a white cop who wants to do something bad, if there's not a black person available, they'll do it to a white person. And we've seen that before. People also, men, women killed by cops when they shouldn't have been. And the big problem is that, as you talked about, is the problem is, well, our police department tends to escalate as opposed to de-escalate. All the training from my police officers here in San Francisco would go into how to de-escalate a situation, how to react to someone on a human level, and how to de-escalate the situation where the object of the whole outcome is nobody is harmed. Nobody's harmed. The citizen's not harmed. The bystander's not harmed. The subject's not harmed. The police officer's not harmed. That would be the idea. If you go back decades ago, the police department was trained in de-escalation. They would all talk about that. De-escalate situations. And nowadays, it seems like all we're seeing is situations that escalate. They start out with something, and we see it with our own eyes on video. It starts out with a situation where you're thinking, well, this is not a big deal. You have a guy who's drunk, who can hardly move, surrounded by 6 cops. You think, oh, this is an easy situation to de-escalate, and then it escalates into that person getting injured or killed. And that's a big problem, is that we have too many officers who right away go to the gun. They right away go to the gun, And we have too much leniency when it comes to what they can do and what they can't do. And that's another big problem. We have laws that you say, if a suspect gets within 15 feet of an officer with any kind of a weapon, the officer has a right to shoot them. I would like the same laws for the police that you and I have. If someone comes at you with a fist, you can't shoot him in the head with a gun. That you would go to jail. You and I would go to jail. But too often the police officer, when a big guy comes at them physically, they have a right to shoot him 20 times. Right. We wouldn't have that right. We'd go to jail. And not only do these police officers not go to jail, they keep their jobs most of the time. And I think it's also a problem with the public consciousness, because we see when these officers go on trial, which is rare, as you know, but the rare time they do go on trial, what happens? 99% of the time they get off, because the public is trained. Police can simply do whatever they want. They should be held to a lower standard than the citizens. I don't think that's right. They should be held to a higher standard than the citizens. They are given a gun. They are paid by us. They should be held to a higher standard. And so those are the big issues. Holding the police to a higher standard, not a lower standard. Teaching about de-escalation, not escalation. And teaching officers how to deal with people on a human level, how to understand. In cities like San Francisco, people are going through a hell of a lot in their mind. We have mentally ill people on the street here because we don't have programs for the mentally ill here. We have a lot of things going on that the police officers need to understand. Maybe leads up to that person doing what they're doing at that point in the day, and how to deal with that. And I think there's just not enough of that human contact, that training to deal with the human condition here. That's a big part of it. It really is a big part of it. I don't think there are many police officers who go out and say, well, I'm a white guy, I'm going to go out and kill a black guy today. I just don't think that's the way it works. But I think it's a power thing, and I think the problem is they do not have the proper training, and nothing is ever done in this city and in most cities in this country to change that. It's just status quo. It's status quo. Every once in a while there'll be that incremental change, and you and I know what happens. They'll change the police chief when this. Look at what had to happen here in San Francisco. All the public pressure, people going to City Hall, people sitting on the floors of City Hall just to get the police chief. But this is Band-Aid stuff. This is not addressing the root problem.
Right. So back to I just want to, because I thought this case with Luis Gongor Pat summed up so many of your issues, is that he was evicted. So again, the right to housing. He was working poor. So again, the $15 minimum wage or the livable wage, and the equal justice itself. The other thing is, because he was an immigrant and San Francisco is a sanctuary city, which is a good thing. And I wanted to hear your position on San Francisco being a sanctuary city, and would you work to maintain that?
Oh, of course, I would totally work to maintain sanctuary cities, and it's very important now with the Trump administration trying to. And luckily, we just had this judge that's saying he can't withhold funding now, but it's against the Constitution, which is great. But we need to be very vigilant. Because as we've seen, Donald Trump is packing the courts with right-wing, ultra-conservative judges. So in the near future, these judgments can change in his favor. And we have to be very careful about this. And we have to be more vigilant than ever. Yeah, I'm totally for San Francisco being a sanctuary city and maintaining the status of sanctuary city. But it needs the word sanctuary needs to go deeper than that. It needs to be sanctuary for people who live here, so they don't have to live on the streets, so they don't have to wonder where their next meal is coming from, or whether they're going to survive on the streets that night, or whether it's a situation with a police officer or just another civilian is going to lead to their death on the streets. That is the part of sanctuary that we don't talk about enough. And I believe we can be a total sanctuary city. We need to be a city where everyone can live here. If you're wealthy and you work in the tech industry, you're welcome. And I want to make this very clear. When I talk about the industries, the real estate industries and the tech industries, I'm not talking about the average guy or woman who works for Salesforce. I know plenty of them. I know plenty of them who work for tech industries and still can't afford to live here. That's how crazy it's gotten here. They have to work for Salesforce in the city, but live in the East Bay, because even on great salaries, they can't afford to live here. This is a problem for everybody, for every income level here. And when I talk about the tech industry, I talk about the CEOs, I talk about the owners, I talk about the bosses, I talk about the millionaires and billionaires running those industries who are not giving back enough to the city. They are making billions and billions of dollars off of this city. They want to be here. No offense to these other cities, but they want to be in San Francisco. They're building here. They don't want to be in Millbrae. They don't want to be in Redwood City. They want to be here. So if they want to be here, they need to give back more to stay here. And as mayor, I will say, we need to get together. We need to find a way that you guys are going to help get people off the streets here, help us build standalone public housing if you want to continue to do your business here. Or, I'm sorry, you are free to take your business elsewhere. The mayor of this city has never the courage to do that. In fact, Ed Lee has been in the pockets of these industries. All the laws that he's the passed have helped them. All the tax breaks have helped them. The Twitter tax helped them. And we see progressives who have backed that Twitter tax, which is reprehensible. I think we need a mayor who's really going to stand up and say, you're welcome here. Absolutely welcome here. We want you here. You're going to have to give back more.
Excellent, excellent. Mike, I just want to do two more things. First of all, I just want to make a pitch for the Green Party. And the Green Party, I think when progressives run as a Green Party, they're helping to build a party. And I think that NPPs, I believe in their message because they're in it for the right reasons. They came from the Bernie camp a lot. But I think that as their campaign, whether they win or lose, it may or may not build a movement, So I'm hoping maybe one day you consider the Green Party. I'm not saying you have to. That doesn't mean people shouldn't vote for you if you don't. But just making my pitch for the Green Party.
Well, and I like I said, I love what the Green Party stands for. I love Jill Stein. I was behind her 100%. I just, at this point, I guess because I'm so sour of the party system and I really believe in people, I want people to start focusing more on people over party. Look at what's going on in Alabama. Look what's going on in Alabama. There are Republicans who say, well, I have to vote because I'm a Republican. I can't vote for, they're not saying I can't vote for Doug Jones because of this reason. I can't vote for a Democrat. We align too much with that, the word that's being used a lot now, tribalism, or this cult party loyalty.
Yes.
I want people to try to get out of that mindset. I want people to start thinking independently and looking at the candidate, looking at the person. And I want this, I'm a progressive populist movement, and the progressive populist movement to be, we just won a lot of elections this year and we're going to win more. This is the movement I am really concerned in more than a party movement or building a party. But I understand what you're saying. And, I love the Green Party. I love what they stand for. And I really hope they'll be open-minded when it comes to voting for me in November of 2019. And also, if I may, I have to do a little pitch here because I'm not taking any corporate money. You've heard this pitch before. For people like Bernie Sanders and Jill Stein, not taking any corporate money. What I'm doing, I want to make this very clear, is I'm going for public funding. A lot of people don't understand that San Francisco has public funding. What this means is, in a period of time they give you, if you bring in a certain amount in small donations, they give you money. The city gives you money. So the way it works is if you raise $1,000 in contributions between $10 and $100 between May of 2018 and August 2019, the city will give you $1 million. Danger. If I can get that public financing from the city, I really do believe I can win this race. Like most progressives, I don't need the most money, but I do need enough money. And San Francisco is a very wealthy city and a very tough city to run in if you're going to try to hit the airwaves or do whatever you have to do to cover the city, and also compete with the corporate people I'll have to compete with. I'm going to have to compete with corporate establishment, have money, who have wealthy financiers, who have people in the tech industry and real estate industry who are going to give to them, who have wealthy donors who are going to give to them and want favors back. I'm not going to have any of that. So I need people to go to right now, Mike for SFMayor, or just that's my email, but just go to mike4sfmayor.com, Mike4 sfmayor.com, and you can make a contribution. Like I said, I'm looking for those Bernie $27 contributions, and come next year, once we get into this public financing, I'll be looking for people in San Francisco to host house parties so we can get together and we can truly do what I believe is very important. And as mayor, I will push for this. I believe we need a true public financing system for every election. nationwide. We need public financing. They have it in places like Arizona for state offices where it's all public financed, and if you decide not to opt in, usually you don't win. Because even in a red state like Arizona, a lot of people do believe in public financing and taking corporate money out of politics. So as mayor, I'll push for a true public financing system with a certain amount of money, and that's it. And there's no more money spent, and there's no more money raised. I will fight for that, and as a progressive, I'm taking advantage. And as far as I know so far, I'm the only person in this race public financing system to prove I'm a true progressive and I want to get corporate money out of politics. So please, guys, Mike, the number 4, sfmayor.com, give what you can and help me win.
Okay, well, you covered that last item I was going to cover, which was your website. And so what I'll also do is on this video is I'll go ahead and put your website on there in the description, so people can leave a donation and find other ways to support you by maybe even volunteering. Okay?
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I appreciate you doing this interview, and I wish you luck. I definitely think you're a good progressive candidate for mayor of San Francisco.
Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You got it. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.